Breaking the rules has become something of a rule with modern horror movies. Just when you think you have the genre figured out with all its reliable trope machinery happily churning away, like virgins being sacrificed, horrifying, repulsive creatures, and final girls hacking their way to the end credits, something new bursts onto the screen that throws a big old spanner into the works and flips audience expectation on its head. Instead, we end up with virgins throwing their white robes to the wind, poor sympathetic monsters, and final girls being anything but final, in a desperate bid to flip the script on what we already know. Often, this is how new rules are introduced and celebrated within the genre, since innovation breeds copycats. But the first film that does something completely abnormal for average horror is always beloved. Going into a movie with expectations on what you're gonna get is almost impossible to avoid in a world of internet hype and over-enthusiastic trailers. Fortunately, however, these are the films that manage to successfully slash their way to something entirely unexpected. I am the manufactured jump scare of Ash from What Culture? Boo! And these are 9 subversive horror movies that aren't what you expect. 9. Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Of course, the king of meta horror has a few tricks up his sleeve when it comes to subversive movies, defining 3 eras of the genre in his reign as one of the most influential directors out there. He has worked his way through everything from exploitation nastiness and national hysteria in The Last House on the Left, to 80s slasher tropes in A Nightmare on Elm Street, to self-aware rule-making and breaking in Scream. And whilst the latter would be the obvious choice for this particular title, there is another film that still stands as an unexpected gem in his personal horror history canon. What most would expect to be a run-of-the-mill Nightmare sequel actually turns out to be far more considered in its approach to the source material. Playing out as a real-life take on Freddy's legend, the monster breaks free from fiction and starts to kill off the actors involved, turning what could have easily been a slasher packed to the brim with cheesy one-liners and derivative content into an insanely interesting premise. Wes Craven even stars as himself, writing the very script that the film follows the beats of, making for some mind-melting commentary on Hollywood horror as much as it provides gruesome entertainment. 8. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Horrors with a thick vein of comedy running down the middle are some of the most subversive out there, recognising that the key to good movie making in the genre is coaxing a reaction out of an audience. And the very best ones are born from when we don't know whether to laugh or recoil in disgust. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil in particular is one of the most underrated movies of its kind that manages to balance this concept, spreading blackly comic humour and swathes of blood in equal measure as it flips and reverses our perspective of backwoods horror antics. Tucker and Dale are 2 simple fellas trying to vacation in peace when a bunch of rowdy college students come along and spoil their fun, assuming the pair to be murderous hillbillies out to kill them in cold blood. When one girl is saved from drowning and nursed back to health by the soft-hearted duo, the students think that the worst has happened, and their bumbling efforts to out Tucker and Dale as evil result in some hilariously unfortunate consequences. Wood chippers, errant bees, and accidental booby traps make for a horror film that is not what you'd expect from your average teen slasher movie. 7. Cat People. Cat People is one of those films that has made a cult status of being subversive before it was cool, bringing the innovative loot and bust trope to life that has been hotly recreated in almost every horror movie that has existed since. Detailing a slow build of tension as a woman is followed home at night, a noise that sounds startlingly like the hiss of a cat, which is a death sentence in this film, is revealed to be nothing more than the brakes of a bus, which she then boards and safely travels home in. Whilst this trope has lasted the ages, Cat People itself seems to have faded into obscurity, telling the tragic tale of Irina, who believes herself to be descended from the evil titular cat people and will transform into a panther if she is aroused into a passion. Oi oi. The film is one that toys with psychological expectations of a film, and jump scares in particular, only to leave audiences consistently second-guessing themselves whenever they think that they've got it all figured out. 6. BERBERIAN Sound Studio. For how often movies rely on dialogue to tell their stories, BERBERIAN Sound Studio shirks all responsibility that stems from talking through its narrative, instead relying on strange soundscapes and an uneasy atmosphere to deliver its premise rather than tried and tested means. Following a man tasked with creating the sound effects for an Italian giallo movie, which he initially just believed to be a nice old movie featuring horses, the project begins to take an unprecedented toll on his mental state, making for some weird experiences as he attempts to finish his work. BERBERIAN Sound Studio takes the classic workings of a movie and puts them front and centre, hiding the actual film from sight as we watch Gilderoy put all the parts together into an invisible whole. Instead of getting a story slowly play out as a conventional film within a film, it is machinations within machinations, with the creepy atmosphere and disturbing feeling far more important than visuals alone. Sound is always an important part of a horror movie, but interestingly, this makes it the only part. 5. A Christmas Horror Story. What is more on the nose for expectation-flipping movies than one titled A Christmas Horror Story? It does everything that it says on the tin. Whilst this particular festive flavour of horror movie is not a new one, A Christmas Horror Story proves fresh and interesting since it combines a multitude of different subversions and packages them up with a lovely tinsel ribbon. An anthology movie that tells 4 stories, the film dissects different holiday horrors with ironic glee, delivering a Krampus born from bad behaviour, a vengeful ghost intent on seduction, and a radio DJ describing a mall disturbance as Christmas shoppers descend for their gifts. The last story, however, is the most subversive of all, regaling us with a Santa Claus that is fighting a zombie infection plaguing his elven workers. Of course, all is not how it appears, and a pithy commentary on the holiday season is revealed to be lurking under all of the seasonal cheer. For anyone that reaches the end of their tether when it comes to relentlessly upbeat Christmas spirit, this film is a dose of black humour that you need. 4. Tusk. Kevin Smith's terrifying tale of a man kidnapped and transformed into a walrus is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like from that description. Gross, upsetting, and downright repulsive, watching Justin Long lose his sense of humanity while sewn into a suit of human skin designed to look like a big rubbery marine mammal is an experience. And definitely not what you're expecting when you whack on a Smith movie, since he's known for his excellent sense of indie comedy. Long's pained screeches that replace his ability to talk are enough on their own. And then you get a Johnny Depp cameo where he's thrown on a French-Canadian accent, coupled with the strange dive into a backstory of a man obsessed with reconnecting with his walrus brethren. It is all a bit much, taking on monster movie tropes and fashioning them into something new and disgusting in the process. Nobody needed to see a fight to the death between man and his horrifying man blob, yet here we are. Not what you expect probably sells this one short a bit. It does exactly what you'd think it does from turning a man into a walrus, but hell, it is in the most nightmarish way possible. 3. Warm Bodies. There's a zombie movie for everyone nowadays, even for those that don't really like zombie movies, with Warm Bodies as a case in point. Instead of your average face-munching horror fest that sees a world ravaged by hungry shuffling corpses, this film depicts one where an unusual zombie has more brains in his head than he does in his hands, forming an unlikely relationship with a human girl when he rescues her from a horde of his own kind. Nicholas Hoult plays R, a member of the undead that retains enough faculties to know that he wants to get on down with Teresa Palmer's Julie. And the film unfolds as a romantic comedy growing up between the cracks of a horror film. It takes everything we already know from post-apocalyptic movies and builds something new out of all of the pieces, making for a trippy watch for those that see the undead and think they know what they've got in store for the night. Sadly, it has been largely forgotten and relegated to the underrated scrap heap for coming out in a time when the world had absolutely had enough of zombies, but it's worth a watch all the same. 2. Afflicted. Found footage movies come with an ass full of tropes that audiences have become all too familiar with since the inception of the genre. We know the tapes are the lasting legacy of whoever's been captured on them, as they've all surely been killed by supernatural forces. We know they're going to be filmed by amateur directors trying to make a mockumentary with their friends, and we know that no one can hold the damn camera straight to save their bloody lives. Quite literally. Afflicted, however, takes things to the next level with a well-produced title, and a unique vision for its narrative that doesn't follow the usual disease pandemic story that so often crops up in shaky cam movies. Whilst it does have a healthy dollop of infection, it is one that veils a far more interesting take on vampire legend from an up-close and personal viewpoint, subverting expectations for both its medium and its subgenre in the process. Instead of claustrophobic settings or zombie hordes, Afflicted looks at one man's fight against his new nature. Ooh, spooky. 1. American Mary. The TUSK sisters are a rising force in genre cinema, delivering some of the most subversive horror offerings out there with their intense takeover of all things spooky. American Mary is one of their defining early works that perfectly demonstrates the macabre tastes and devilishly sharp wit. Telling the tale of a woman that gets into the business of black market plastic surgeries for easy money that slowly spirals out of control. With a woman carved up to look like Betty Boop, one made nipple and genitalialist in the form of a human doll, and plenty of other clients getting something extra special from our good old Mary, it is a gnarly look at the underground world of very literal chop shops. Positing a perspective that follows in the footsteps of Teeth and Jennifer's Body, as John Townsend covers in his book on subversive horror cinema, American Mary represents another facet in anti-New Puritanism, functioning as a gross-out feminist message being sent that brings sexuality to the front and centre from a woman's perspective. In any case, its cult gem nature means it is one that hasn't broken into mainstream expectation for what a revenge movie should entail, making Mary's path a unique one to follow. And that's our list. What other horror movies came completely out of nowhere? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. I've been Ash and this has been What Culture. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and come back again soon for some more lovely film content. Thanks for watching.